Hello there, my crafty friends. It's Ashley Pfeiffer, the maker behind Stamped AF. For this month's Stamping Society video and Insta hop, we are featuring small treats. And I just had to do this little apple basket. So if you have followed me for any time, you know this time is my favorite time of the year, partly due to the fact that Werther's Originals has seasonal favorites, limited edition caramel apple soft caramels, and pumpkin spice soft caramels. Now, try as I might, I actually don't have anything pumpkin right now because, you know, every year I go crazy on the fall stuff and it's like I don't give fall cards. But when I saw this, I could not resist. So the caramel apples was an easy decision because cheerful basket. We've got apples right there, right? And to bring in the little bit of caramel that's in the treats, I did a little something fancy. So while you're going to see all of the details in the video, in order to follow along and recreate one of these on your own, you will need that tutorial. So there are 3 ways to get said tutorial. You can, 1, purchase it outright. 2, join my team. All team members of Stamping Society design team members get the tutorial for free. Or 3, you can earn it with a qualifying purchase, which in Canada is $35. So let me show you how I made this. So I will not be giving any measurements in the video. However, if you have the tutorial to follow along with, this will all make sense. I have created my little basket, if you will. I've already gone ahead and I have die cut all my pieces. So the embossed basket, love the wood grain on there. I die cut 2 of the solid baskets, one on the front, one on the back, and you could go as far as to putting another one of these on the back, but I feel like someone's gonna only be looking at the front, like they're gonna stand it up even after it's empty and just admire it that way. Now I am going to give you one tip in the video. To get this cute little tablecloth, napkin, whatever it is, I found that die cutting 2 pieces gives you a much better embossed image. So I was using basic white thick followed by another piece underneath. Whether that be thick or regular is entirely up to you. But I've die cut my apples. This, believe it or not, will be our caramel. So this is that little butterfly in the bundle, which I have yet to use. I actually thought about making these into pumpkins and I thought, no, let's just stick with the apples. So we've got some silver foil for the handle here. I would highly recommend using some adhesive sheet. You don't want to be trying to glue that tiny little handle on. So I'm just actually going to go ahead and trim this down. I have die cut all the other pieces, so it's literally going to be coloring them and assembling. I'm going to keep that there so that I don't lose it. I've got one of the smallest circles from the picture this dies. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of coloring. We can leave this, the 2 solid ones, solid, but I like to add a little bit of color to these little slats. We'll leave that as is. Okay, so with soft suede Stampin' Blends, and mine are, my light one is nearly dry, which is perfect for what I'm trying to do. I actually find that sometimes when they're dry, they give you some great techniques that you wouldn't get if they were super juicy. So we're just gonna add a little bit of detail, because if this was a very juicy one, the detail would be way too much. Now you can come in and add a little bit around the outside and the middle, which I think I actually did on my first one, because you can see it's a little bit darker in the slats, in between the slats. Right now there is not a whole bunch of definition in behind there, so I will take just my bullet tip and add a little bit, because right now it's looking very solid. So let's just come in, because of course it would be darker back there, right? There we go. What a difference. So now we can go ahead and add our little slats. And if you notice, there are 2 little indentations on either side. You can just use those. You can just drag your glue straight across. It's not going to make a difference if it gets into those little channels. Whoopsie. Ah. Oh, that's the wrong one. We don't need the small one. I threw out the wrong one. now, of course, it won't come off. That's okay. A little bit more glue. Sorry, you don't want the shortest one. You want the longest and the medium. I've yet to use the short one, actually. I don't want to cover up all that detail at the bottom. Okay, so you can see that soft suede scribble that we did kind of on top it's not very obvious. We want a subtle little bit of definition, just so it's not this soft suede blob. Okay, so that's all we need to do the front. We're going to adhere our little tablecloth, and I tried a whole bunch of different ways to color this thing so that I could get it to be red and white. Nothing really worked. I tried using Stampin' Blends and it bled. Like, it would not stay in the little squares. I tried inking up the die before die cutting it, and that did not quite work. So it's white. It's a very pristine white napkin. So while I have some blends out, I'm actually using SU 500 to do my caramel. So I'm just going to color this little butterfly die. And you can add a couple of different coats to it so that it gets darker. You can bring in the, I think it's the 600. I'm like a Post-it note now. So bring in a little bit of the 600 and just make it look a little more caramel-like. If we had cinnamon cider cardstock still, that would be perfect. But we don't. Excuse me while I just stay over here and cry for a minute. Sorry, I couldn't talk there. There were dogs walking by, and of course, 2 of my 3 were going nuts. So I just did my coloring there. We've got our apples. You can decide if you want to have both with a stem, or maybe one of them just has a leaf coming out like mine does. We are going to add those with Stampin' Dimensionals. I would suggest that instead of trying to get these things adhered with glue, just go ahead and place it where you want it, and then let the Stampin' Dimensional do the adhering. It is a very small shape, and the dimensional can kind of trap that leaf in there. Oh, and look, it's so cute. It's on the front. That was purely accidental. This one, I think we're just going to do the leaf, and we're going to take advantage of the fact that the stem is on there and just kind of keep it down there like that. Now, chances are if you had a caramel apple, it would not still have the leaf on it, but it needed something. Oh, look how cute. Okay, so what I did for the apples was I actually took my apple die again. There's 2 of them, which is fantastic. And we're going to cut them apart so that we can do both at the same time. And instead of just free-handing it, we are going to put our apple dies right on there. And I would suggest maybe a piece of washi tape or something, so the second one doesn't end up looking quite as cute. But, I mean, this is pretty darn good, right? Now, we do we want to have them the right way or the wrong way? We'll make it work either way. But do make sure you get that little rounded part at the top, otherwise you're going to have to cut that after the fact. Easy enough to come off, right? So this one is still in the die. We'll take that bit of washi tape off. And when we have, it's up to you if you want to do this now or later. I think I'm going to do it. I'm going to adhere these and then give it a go. But we want these to actually look like caramel. So we're going to go one step further. So I'm just going to add a little bit of glue. Let's decide which one we want on which. Doesn't really matter, but I don't want it interfering with that leaf, so let's do it this way. So you're just going to follow the pattern left from your die. This one's going to be a bit of a stinker. So we'll put a little bit of glue on the apple itself. Now it doesn't want to come off, of course. So we'll put a little bit of glue over here. You don't want to go too far because you don't want that glue to show after the fact. Is it that way? Or is that way? And then when I have it on there and I can hold on just a little bit, we'll move that leaf to the front. Get rid of that little dab of glue. There's a tiny bit of washi tape on there. Now with this one, I may actually put a dot of glue in there after the fact. Like I said, the dimensional can do a lot, but you may find that you want to have a little bit of glue just as an insurance policy. So when you know you're not going to be touching these again for a while, you are going to set them aside, but not before you add some shimmery crystal effects. You can use fine tip glue, you can use this, you can use whatever you'd like, but let's make it look like it's hot, sticky, well, maybe not hot, but sticky caramel. So I found that by adding a little bit of the crystal effects, it did just what I wanted it to. But this will take some time to dry, so I just got an idea. If you wanted to do, say, a candy apple versus a caramel apple, you could use the pearlized enamel effects to make the apple look like a candy apple. Okay, so I am actually, I think I'm, where am I going to put them? I'm going to put them, let's just do it on here. Probably should have done that first. Oh, no, no. See what I mean? You want to have them where they're going to be undisturbed. Don't try and move them. I was thinking I'd move my whole grid paper, but I need it. Okay, so next we will go ahead and prep our little base. So like I said, the dimensions and full written instructions will be in that tutorial. So if you're wanting to recreate this, you can head on over and purchase that tutorial. You can get it for free, or you can join my team. And before I forget, starting on October 4th, which is Tuesday, at the time I'm recording this, throughout the month of October, when you purchase the Stampin' Up! Starter Kit, you are getting $206 worth of product instead of the usual $165. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. The joining link is always in the YouTube description below. I would love to welcome you to my team. Okay, so there is what we need. Here is our little handle. So you may find it easier to just peel this release paper off before you take the die out. Do whatever works best for you. Okay, that was the release paper. There we go. Now it's stuck to my finger, which is exactly what I was hoping for. Okay, so we're going to go from the outer edge to outer edge. It's not a very low hanging handle. So now we can go ahead and you can use tear and tape, you can use liquid glue. I think I am going to use my liquid glue because I don't want to tear my tear and tape 3 separate times. So what we're going to do is adhere it to the bottom. I really did not need to put glue on that one piece yet. So you want it to be level with the bottom of the basket. So just press that down. The higher you go, the more of your candy wrapper that's going to show. And I mean, where there's isn't, it's not ugly by any means, but all you're going to see is this wax paper sticking out. No one is really going to know what's in this basket until they take it out. And then all of our little caramel apples will make sense. Okay, this could not be easier. Well, maybe it could. I tend not to make things easy. Okay, so we're just gonna have it where it's just on the inside of that border, and now you can see we're just going to do the same thing for the back. So start with that bottom piece. I find that's easiest. Bend these two out for the time being. Maybe not. Let's just put the glue right on it. And then just place it down. And make sure you don't see that basket, and I would highly recommend that before that glue sets that you stand it up to make sure that it is where it should be. You don't want these pieces going too far in or too far out. It needs to be like Goldilocks. It needs to be just right. Give that bottom piece a little bit of a press. And if this is the first time you're watching me, one, welcome, and two, this is Tombow liquid glue. It's just in a different container. I like the fine tip applicator better. I do still have my regular tube right there. So I just cut off a little bit of the excess so it's not sticking out too far. Let's put all these pieces back. And now I am just going to stamp and color the apples that are going to go on the inside. So we'll let this sit and set up for a minute before we put the candy in. So I am going to stamp it in Memento Tuxedo Black ink. You could stamp it in Early Espresso. That's what we're going to use for the sentiment. Although you could, you know what, let's just use Memento for both. So that sentiment is from the Through It Together. We're just going to do the, where is it? Thank you. I knew it was near the top. So for the coloring part, I am just going to speed through that. It's nothing fancy. And you know me, I gotta go further. So I am going to bring in my watercolor pencils. I'm gonna add a little bit of yellow, Daffodil Delight, yellow. Doesn't have to be fancy. Got some cherry cobbler, so anywhere where it would be darker, like an apple casting a shadow on another apple, we're going to come in and just darken that up. Like I said, entirely optional, but it adds some more depth that you just can't get with blends, because if you kept adding your blends, at some point the cardstock would only be able to take so much, and you would it would end up bleeding. Your lines wouldn't be crisp anymore. So when I was trying to step up my coloring, I watched a lot of YouTube videos, and this is what they were saying. Come in with watercolor pencils, add some more detail that way. I'm just using some Granny Apple Green. And then we can use some Old Olive just to bring in some darker spots. You can also use your Stampin' Write markers, but if you are using your Stampin' Write markers, make sure you're doing it after you've colored all of your blends, because one is alcohol and one is not. One is water-based, so it will not, they won't play nice together. So now if you want some detail and you don't want to spend a ton of time on it, or you want to build it up without it taking days, you can come in with your basic gray and just darken it up that way, instead of having to spend hours building up your layers, just bring in your basic gray or early espresso and darken it that way. So now we can go ahead and die cut this. If you would prefer, you can fussy cut it so that you can get really close to those stems and leaves, but I am going to go with just die cutting. Okay, so as a final step, if you choose, you can add some Wink of Stella. However, it's going to be the same as if you were trying, like, you're going to end up blending these together, essentially. So that bit of yellow that we added, all the red, all the gray, will kind of blend. So if you don't want it to look all pretty and blended, I mean, it's not pretty if it's not blended, but if you would prefer the look that you had, then don't add the stink of voila, because it does blend it together. It's the equivalent of using a blender pen. And do not go over your leaves at the same time as your apples, because you will end up with red leaves. So do the leaves, do the apples in whichever order you wish, but do not go from an apple to a leaf without first scribbling, because you won't like the color of your leaves. Trust me. Okay, so we are ready for assembly. Now it is easier to assemble or to put these all in and then do what you're gonna do. And if you want to go that extra step, you can have all of the wrappers opening the same way. We're going to put that opening to the back, although it really doesn't matter because these apples are going to hide it. But you might need to squish them a little bit. I did think about putting a little band on them to keep them together, but this was just cute enough on its own. Okay, you know what? I think 5's going to be enough. Do I have 5? I do have 6. I think I squished them more on my first one, so I think I'm going to eat this one. Okay, so now we can go ahead and add our sentiment. Just going to glue that on. Don't want to forget my twine. We can add our apples if they're dry. I think that's going to be my absolute last step. We can add these. So we're just going to add a little bit of glue. Could use thin, like tear and tape, and then fold it over, but you don't have a lot of room. Okay, so just tuck those in. If you get any glue that kind of pops up, just wipe it away before it dries. Give it a good burnish. You can use those candies to push against. Oh, it's so cute, isn't it? It's a little more yellow this time. But I think Poppy Parade, and then these are Strawberry Sorbet. So I think I probably used Strawberry Sorbet blends on my first one. Our bow. So I'm just going to do a little single bow. I do not do any bows without my bow jig anymore. Not a one. So I just wrap it around twice, trim my tails. One of my team members' hubbies made this. They are gorgeous. I still want to use my laser to engrave something into it, but I'm terrified that I'm going to screw it up. Okay, so there we go. Trim those tails. A glue dot, and with a glue dot I just kind of crinkle it so it's all in the back of that knot. Pop that on, and now very carefully with my large clumsy thumbs we're going to put our apples on. Now I don't want that leaf to obstruct my sentiment, so I think this one is going to go over here. Stick that on my finger for a moment, and this leaf is going that way, so We'll have this one right beside the T, and then this one over here. Can move that leaf a little bit, although it looks kind of funny sticking straight up, doesn't it? It's an alfalfa apple. And there we go. I know that probably took a little longer than you or I were expecting, but isn't it adorable? And I mean, if you were making these like assembly line style, you could do all your die cutting and all your stamping and all your coloring and all of it all at one time, and it wouldn't take so long. But I hope you love this as much as I do, and if you make one, I would love to see it. You can tag me on Facebook or Instagram at StampedAF. And if this was your first time here, thank you so much for watching. I hope you will consider hitting that subscribe button below. Catch a new video each week, and we will see you soon, my crafty friends. Bye.